So in this video, we're going to look at using the Invoice Inbox. To get to the Invoice Inbox, you click on Documents and then Invoice Inbox is Z3. So the Invoice Inbox is where all of the invoices are arriving that you need to process. And to understand how it works, really, it's a question of getting emails sent in correctly. So in this case, the first invoice in my list comes from billing at Clarendon, BC. It's sent to Zahara at zaharamail.com. As a result of that, we've identified that it's the business unit Zahara Systems Limited that needs to process it. If I click this little icon up here, I can choose which fields I want to display. So I might want the match supplier, I might want purchase order numbers, invoice number. I could have order net, invoice net. Click on save. Now I've got an awful lot more fields that are displayed up here. And as a result, I can see that the match supplier is Clarendon Enterprises. I can see I've got an invoice number that's been read already. I've got a purchase order number that isn't a valid number, so we can ignore that. But if and I've got the invoice amount as well. So if I wanted to process this invoice, I can do it in two ways. I can either click this button here and basically step through it, or if it's one of my kind of regular suppliers, someone I trust, I could just create this with one button. So if I process this one here, we can see the PDF of the invoice. It's from Clarendon, which is one of our providers. It's for £66, so 55 plus VAT. And if we look at this, the business unit is Zahara Systems Limited, which is correct. The supplier is Clarendon Enterprises Limited, which is correct. There's no purchase order. It's got the invoice date and it's got an invoice number of BA2274, correct. Now if I click on create invoice here and we're on the second screen, now the PDF is going to display here in a second. And remember what we're looking for is an invoice that says £66, 55 plus VAT. So I've got two line items and I've got 55 plus VAT. So actually the invoice is spot on. Is it coded correctly? Yes, it is. It's actually 20% VAT, and that is the correct VAT code that we use. And the nominal code is set to rent, which is absolutely right. So it's a question of why. Why are those codes set? Well, there's two things that set the code. You've got the supplier's default settings have been set to rent. And also, because I've processed a few invoices from Clarendon in the past, it remembers those, what I've used in the past. So it's actually perfect. So if I click next now, my workflow is actually set to export this invoice to Xero, our account system. It won't send it for approval if it's under £5,000. I click next and then I click create invoice. So that invoice is now created and it's on its way and I don't need to do anything else about it. Okay, if I look at another one here, UKFast, this is slightly different. It's the sender is UKFast. They're sending it this time to Click to Scan Limited. So this one here, if I was to click on Process Invoice and take a look at it, then this is a multi-line item invoice. And again, it's read the invoice number up here. Now I know, through history has told me this, that these invoices always create perfectly from UKFast. If I go back to my inbox and I click this button here instead, this tells me it's going to create me an invoice for 43105 to UKFast with this invoice number. And it's even gone and got a little icon to tell me it's UKFast. I'm just going to click create invoice and that's it, done. That invoice is created. I don't need to do anything else with that one. If there was an invoice in and it related to a purchase order, so for example, this one down here, it's saying that it's Spielberg Solutions and there's a purchase order number here. The main difference here is if we click into this one, is that we will see the purchase order number displayed here. So if we find a valid PO outstanding for this supplier, we will display it here. In this case, it's £5,100. And our purchase order is for £5,100. It's dummy data actually, this one, so it's not a genuine invoice. And then I click create invoice in the usual way. The difference here though is that with a purchase order invoice, we will be using the line items from the purchase order. So regardless of what's on this PDF here, we will be using the line items from the purchase order. So if I click on create invoice now, as it happens, the line items are probably identical, but if they were different, I would have to change those line items to reflect what I'm seeing from the PDF here. That's how you match an order and an invoice together.